Can you tell us in your own words, why is cybersecurity important?
Cybersecurity and the importance to businesses and boards. If you go through the iteration of what we've kind of had as a journey, IT security has always been there. Cybersecurity is just this changing world. And why is it changing? The outside world has got more sophisticated. So the tools they use, the data analytics that they can now have on organizations, the threat intelligence that they're gleaning in terms of how they target organizations, all of that has meant that we're getting this growing risk and threat. And for organizations, responding to that is really key. Why? Well, the outcomes are obvious on several fronts. Losing data, especially sensitive data, you're in, from a reputation perspective, in a bad place. Also, the regulatory environment that you're operating in could cause you some sanction concerns and issues. You've also got the growing threat around sabotage risk, which means that as an organisation you could go from a good to bad scenario immediately. So that's what's creating this interesting challenge and growing challenge on organisations.
Great, thank you. And whose job is cybersecurity?
So whose job is cybersecurity? That's a fantastic question and a hard one to answer, if I'm being brutally honest. Ultimately, responsibility sits with the board. The board, it's a governance issue. But whose job is it to actually deal with the growing threat of cybersecurity in an organisation? It will manifest itself in 2 or 3 ways. So there's definitely a senior management responsibility, and normally you would find somebody that's leading that, and they would be reporting into the board, if not on the board. As part of governance, you would normally have some form of security group or committee that meet to, 1, bring the right stakeholders to the conversation, and 2, to really understand your threats, your countermeasures and how you're dealing with those threats, how you get an assurance against these threats, how you're getting comfort that what you have in place is effective. And those are the things that are really important. Now, technology has a play in there. It's obviously a key. There's HR with training because of the people and cultural agenda. And then there's a business, which is the senior manager or the board.
Okay, great, thank you. Now, if you could only give one piece of advice to a business about cybersecurity, what would it be?
Fundamentally, if I look at it through the lens of working with organisations that have gone through a crisis, consistently the organisation didn't properly understand the threats they faced. So they knew what the crown jewels might be, so your assets, but they didn't know how many versions of those they had. And so you're only as strong as your weakest security over that set of data. So if you've got one crown jewel, but you've got 10 versions of it, that's really important to understand. Most organisations that have suffered a significant breach, when you talk to the board, senior management, technology teams, they knew the crown jewel was the risk, but they didn't know how to manage and protect it because there were too many versions. That's key. And then the other fundamental factor is, are you drawing on sufficient intelligence of what the current emerging threats are? So sabotage, ransomware, mobile, because if you don't stay abreast of all of those, you might get yourself to a mature place, but in a year or so's time you're going to be immature because the technology world's moved on.